What does real-world success in business actually look like? Welcome to Bearcats Mean Business, the official podcast of the University of Cincinnati's Carl H. Linder College of Business, where inspiring career stories, honest lessons, and fresh business perspectives from the people building impact in the real world come together. Tune in for inspiration, practical business insights, and forward-looking thought leadership on how ambition turns into action. And now for today's episode.
Brendon, it's such a pleasure to have you here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
I find your career journey really quite remarkable. I mean, you've worked in government, corporate affairs, political campaigns, and now regional leadership. I want to start by having you look back, if you would. Which experiences most shaped how you perceive leadership today?
I have enjoyed, like you said, a very diverse career with different experiences in business, corporate world, in a world like mine now at the Chamber, where I intersect with business and government and civic leadership at times. I worked in politics, like you said. I worked in the mayor's office for Charlie Lucan when he was the mayor for 5 years. And I think that if there was one experience that really did shape influence and leadership, it was that the time that I worked for the mayor in 2001, and most people know Cincinnati's history, is that 25 years ago, this year is the anniversary, in April of 2001, a young man named Timothy Thomas was killed in an incident with a Cincinnati police officer in downtown Cincinnati. And that led to several days of rioting and unrest in downtown Cincinnati. And I was in the mayor's office at the time. And it was a small team leading City Hall. And I got to see up close, I think, a great leader in my former boss, Charlie Lucan, really help steer the city through that crisis. But in addition to seeing him, I got to see some of our best business leaders in this community step forward and look for ways to help this community thrive and recover and put ourselves on a path to where I think we are now, which is a much better and a much more connected city. And we can talk about all of the things that happened in the 25 years since then. But in that one particular week, you saw elective leadership, you saw business and CEO leadership, and in some ways you saw activist leadership. You saw people who were frustrated by the current conditions, looking for ways to shape change. And it all obviously it wasn't everything that just happened in the course of that week. It was years of things that had built up to that moment, and then years of work after that moment. But to see individuals and how they chose to think about their city, how they chose to make change, how they chose to use influence in their voice in service of a bigger cause. It's hard to not, go through life and think about the lessons from that particular week.
I mean, that's a powerful learning experience you had there, Brendon.
I mean, I was 20 something. I mean, the first time I answered the phone from, I went on to have a career where I dealt a lot with the media over my life. But the first time I talked to a reporter, was picking up the phone and having someone say, "This is so-and-so from CNN, and we're calling to come into town to talk about what's going on in Cincinnati, Ohio." And so it was, in some ways, baptism by fire. I mean, you learn a lot in a crisis moment like that. But I also worked for someone who, really prioritized building, trusting relationships with the people in the community. Charlie, Mayor Lucan, at the time, had decades of relationships that he called upon in the business community, in the civic community, in the nonprofit community, in neighborhoods. And I'll never forget that, because I really see that as the kind of model of leadership, is that those relationships that you have to go across this entire community, particularly if you're going to try to make change in a community, or if you're trying to be someone who is, a person of influence and a person of leadership in a community.
Something you just said about just if you want to make change. I mean, this is change around wicked problems in many cases.
Absolutely.
And I love, personally, just listening to the power of that example And yes, you were sitting in the mayor's office, and to some that might seem like a real seat of power and influence. And I'm not saying it isn't, but it's the weaving together of organizations and individuals that is, to me, I hear you saying, a really powerful takeaway.
It was. I mean, I remember, and there were multiple times where the mayor and I was with him for a lot of that week, but I don't want to overstate my influence, but I was certainly there for all of that was going on. There was one room where you had folks from the Urban League who were thinking about what was going on in the community, and then he would leave out of that room, and there was a handful of people working on a different subject from the business community. You had the police department, so you were managing the actual fact that there was still a crisis in a community. To be able to hold a bunch of urgent issues in your mind at the same time and act on them in a coordinated fashion that is a real leadership trait, and I think
Absolutely.
It's underappreciated. We like to say, CEOs are going to tackle this one big problem. Most CEOs never have the luxury of saying, I'm going to focus on just one big problem.
They're all
thinking
interwoven.
they're thinking about what's interwoven, and they're thinking about what is going on inside their organization. And in this particular case, it's what's happening outside the organization, what's happening that is outside the organization that's affecting what's inside. And so, I have certainly been shaped by the time in that office. Again, not just with the mayor, but I think about some of the business leaders, Michael Fisher, John Williams, who were predecessors of mine, is now CEO of the chamber, were both frequently engaged. Dr. Janet Reed, who I had known for a long time already when I was there, who was deeply involved. Father Graham, president of Xavier University, if we're allowed to mention Xavier on this wonderful Bearcats podcast, and Charlotte Otto from Procter & Gamble, and Jim Zimmerman from Macy's, and Joe Pickler from Kroger. And these were, I'm sure I'm forgetting some folks, but they are legends in our business community who rolled up their sleeves and said, our job as business leaders is also to think about this community that we are in.
I think Brendon, that I study tensions and I see them everywhere. And one of the principles I've come to find is that the more stakeholders you are accountable to, the more tensions you experience and the more interwoven that they are.
Yeah.
And I think what you're describing is a really powerful connection across a lot of stakeholders, and with leaders who understand their role is to navigate and lead, but not necessarily to just solve. It's so much bigger than that.
Totally. It's so much bigger than that. It's thinking about the connectedness of issues in a community. We went through this process right after that. Again, this was 25 years ago this year. We're recording this in June of 2026. This was, it all happened in 2001. There was an organization that was created called Cincinnati CAN, Community Action Now, and that included business and civic leaders from all over the community to think about issues related to police community relations, issues related to economic development, issues related to, the Minority Business Accelerator, which is now the Cincinnati Business Accelerator, part of the Cincinnati Chamber, was created out of that effort. A lot of the police reforms, though there was a collaborative agreement and a Department of Justice investigation, they were centered around that table. And so you had 100 civic leaders, business and civic leaders coming together, and they not only offered and suggested solutions and ways of working, they also connected with each other and built a level of trust in the community. And so in some ways, I see those relationships still today. And that is I think, out of that tragedy, there is an advantage in this community, is that it did bring together some disparately connected individuals in service of a larger or more hopeful vision of our city.
Let's go a little further into your career, your journey. All right, that was 2001. You then had some different roles after that, and I'm curious because now you are sitting in the chamber as its CEO. It's a tremendous organization, but you had choices between 2001 and now of where you felt like you should be seated for metaphorically speaking, to have the greatest impact. Can you share a little bit about how you made the move to finally decide, you know what, I want to be at the city regional level and not necessarily, for example, at an organizational level, which you certainly have done as well?
Yeah, I wish there was my career path is non-traditional. It's not like I've gotten on one and stayed in one particular lane. That works for me. It doesn't work for everybody. I appreciate the different adventures. And in fact, when Jill Meyer, who's my most recent predecessor at the Chamber, called me and invited me to come join her team, her text message to me, which I saved and referenced with her quite a bit, was, I'm looking for someone who appreciates a good life-changing adventure when it comes along. And really that was my leap off the diving board into coming over to the Chamber, is that I knew it would be a little bit of a life-changing adventure from going from corporate America there. But what I think was, what's a defining mission for me, and that sounds really heady, but most people don't sit down and think about what their mission is. But what I have seen and experienced in this community time and time again is that when business and civic leaders, and that includes academic and nonprofit and grassroots leaders, when they come together in service of something bigger, they can solve a big, difficult issue in a community. And every time I've seen that, I have been inspired by it, but also interested in making sure that we pass that legacy on to future generations, so that people who, in an era where because of our phones and because of so many other things we feel disconnected from other people, that that these networks and connections still work. And so I don't know if there's a defining moment, but what I get up for in the morning is making sure that we can teach in some way, or help leaders who are in positions of authority and influence today understand the power that they have to make this a better place. And so, I participated in Leadership Cincinnati, 15 years ago.
I love it.
It was wonderful. And
Wonderful.
Conversations in there, I wanted people to understand that if you make yourself a little bit vulnerable to coming out of your business or to coming out of City Hall and connecting with other folks as part of that tension, because like you said, there's tensions there. I can just do my thing, but if I open myself up to other conversations and other individuals,
very comfortable always.
It's not comfortable always, and particularly in this moment in time in our community, there's risk. And so if there's a mission of mine, it is to make sure that we are helping leaders in this community get comfortable with that tension, get comfortable with that risk, and say, yes, I do have a role to play in the future of this community.
There are a couple of lessons. I hope that these podcasts, because I get to have wonderful people. Michael Fisher was on recently. One is that nobody's path is straight. I mean, not even by a long shot. I think yours is fascinating because you are jumping sectors, not just organizations, which I don't see as much, and I love. But the second is that it takes the whole person. I mean, I love the way you think about this. We maybe this sounds a bit tangential, but I worry sometimes for the younger generations that they can feel quite negative about the rate of change and the ability to change in a polarized and especially with social media, a very negative world. Yeah. But we have the blessing of time. We know things change. We know people make an impact all the time.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure we continue to instill that, not just hope, but motivation to be the change, because it takes people.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And it takes, the Gen Z, we've done some work at the Chamber. My colleague Audrey Treasure, who leads our Workforce Innovation Center, has done some work on Gen Z, and we did some focus groups, and it's really fascinating. And anytime I get the chance to spend time with college students today, or university students, recent graduates who talk about kind of what their experience has been like, I'm fascinated by it, and I'm looking for those nuggets of what are you interested in? What do you want your world to be like? It's often different from the world that we're in today, but they're not there's no shortage of opinions on it. If anything, it's help me figure out how to get into this swim lane. Help me figure out how to get into a place where I can. It's not just about making change either. Some changes are. You can make change in some. I'll tell you a funny story.
Good.
Because we've gotten really heavy really quickly.
I know we have.
A funny story.
That's all right.
Let's
hear a funny story.
I graduated from Xavier, and when I was a student senator, I started out in the kind of peace and justice world.
Okay.
And then I decided to run for student senate, mostly because I was frustrated by I didn't feel like the peace and justice programs were getting their fair share. So I said, well, I'll go be on student senate and I'll help make sure that they are attended to. Well, then I got really into student senate, as people who touch politics are, it tends to happen. My big project when I was at Xavier as a student senator in senior year was getting the university to change the toilet paper in the dorms from 1-ply to 2-ply. This was big news. It was on the front page of the Cincinnati Enquirer in 1999. So my first big headline was some pretty small change stuff. And so I like to think that we've probably tried to go on to some more consequential efforts.
To start somewhere, Brendon.
But it has to start somewhere.
It does.
And so there are some things that are small changes to make, but some of it is you can change culture in your world or in your neighborhood by just how you show up. And if you are the kind of leader, you might be a mid-level manager on an accounting team, and you are doing an awesome job in your work, and you are contributing to the company and making it a better organization and contributing to the bottom line. And if you go one step further, if you help bring the outside in, if you help think about what's going on in the world around you, you are going to go from a really great leader to the highest level excellent of leader, because you're seeing what's happening outside the walls. And so part of this, it's not just about saying I'm going to take up a cause. It's about understanding the world in which you're in, the history, the trends, the needs, and then thinking about how your organizations and the people around you can contribute to what that future looks like.
Well, I think that's a great segue to talk a little bit more about leadership. I mean, you've already shared some names of individuals that truly are legends of Cincinnati. I'd love to hear your view on what leadership qualities have really stood out to you from those who are able to not just move their organizations, but the city forward. What do you look for? What have you seen?
I mentioned the names, and not to name drop, but because it is, I'm so fortunate to have had exposure to these kinds of individuals, and not to cross-sector into Grant is our producer here, but his uncle's podcast I was on. So I'll use a Reds reference here. This is like, I feel like in some ways I got to be the ball boy on a World Series Reds team. I got to be around the best players at the time and see how they interacted with each other and what they were doing. I didn't do much when I was 23 years old, but I certainly did learn a ton from all of these individuals. And what I saw is advantages and influence and ability goes to people who show up. One, you have no idea the advantage you get by just choosing to be in rooms and by saying, I will go to that. And I know that in this time of, there's so much going on, we say, well, I got to prioritize my schedule, prioritize my own time. If there's something that you care about, showing up to that one extra meeting, showing up to that one extra conversation or coffee is really important. Doing the work, which these are simple things, but the person who writes the first memo, the first email, the first salvo in a conversation to say, I'm going to advance this discussion forward, they can have enormous influence with that. If you choose to sit down and say, I'm going to start this conversation and lay out some issues, even if it's not ends up where you go. I had a later opportunity when we were working on transportation issues when I got to the chamber, one of the first things that Jill and I worked together on is to say, what does the transportation strategy need to be in terms of how the business community engaged? And I had a blank sheet of paper and got to write a little bit about how we should engage, what we should focus on, and what issues we would need to cover. I hired my colleague Pete Metz, who came on and has been, one of the best partners I've ever had in terms of doing civic work in this community over the last decade. And We were able to execute on much of what was in that document. I go back and look at it sometimes and say, it wasn't all right, but it certainly did set the tone for the work that we're going to do. So I tell people, from a leadership perspective, start to do the work. And then there's no substitute for finding time to listen, to what's going on. And the listening and learning aspect of a community, it goes hand in hand with trying to understand what's going on in this region. We are not so unique we like to think we are sometimes, but we're not so unique as to think that we can't apply lessons from other communities here. We can. However, if you show up and you've got a whole bunch of lessons from a bunch of other communities, I'm excited to see you. I also want you to say, I'm anxious to understand this community too.
Right.
And that means understanding the issue, the issues. My colleague, we were talking about Leadership Cincinnati. My colleague, Sean Comer, who just does a phenomenal job leading Leadership Cincinnati. One of the things that he talked about even in his interview, and what I know about Sean, is that he cares about the history block by block in this community. And so if you're thinking about art in Cincinnati, are you going back 25 years to look at what this city's relationship with art has been? If you're thinking about poverty in Cincinnati, are you thinking about what are the trends that have developed over 200 years that have led to some of the conditions that we have here today? And so I want people who are interested in what's happening here, and I think those, together, those are leadership traits that I think help particularly people who aspire to be civic leaders show up and do well.
I love that point, Brendon, because I think people who aren't from Cincinnati might think of us as monolithic or I don't know, unified in some way, but there are so many different stories and elements from the neighborhoods and let alone the history. One of the things that I think often of in leadership for myself as a leader, but also in my work, is just the power of vision and building alignment. This is kind of a Patrick Lencioni and beyond, but I think it's absolutely crucial. And then I hear examples like you're given and think, building vision that can weave together that variety of stakeholders and neighborhoods and history is a different level of challenge. I wonder how you think about building vision and fostering alignment at that level, getting us all rowing in the same direction.
Yeah, I wish I had. I don't have all the answers. There have been plenty of times where I have failed in an effort to try and get a whole bunch of people to go. Yes, that's how we learn. And cities are messy and complicated. It's what makes them exciting. If you've done any reading about cities and regions, you know that they're like careers are not straight lines. The thing that occurred to me as I was kind of thinking about this conversation is you have to invest other people in the vision. You have to convince them that vision is something that they can hold on to as well. If you think about it from a business perspective, been a lot of IPO news or a lot of IPO topics in the news lately. In some ways, if you're trying to get people excited about your community vision or something that you're trying to do here, you're almost doing a little bit of an IPO, which means you have to give people stock in your vision. And that means you lose some control of it, because at some point somebody could buy a whole bunch of it and say, oh, well, I have a little different vision of it, but they are owners. They feel ownership of the bigger cause in general. And so if you are leading something, at some point you have to be willing to sell shares. You have to be willing to say, I am bringing you into this in a way in which you actually have ownership of this. This is no longer just mine. It might have started with my idea. It might have been my invention. It might have been my thing. And it rarely is just one person's. But in this particular example, you starting something, if you're going to bring people complicated community situation. This goes for business too. This goes for teams that you're working with within an organization, is that you have to bring people into that vision and let them feel like they have ownership of it.
I'm going to remember the IPO metaphor. It's a really good one because ownership matters. I mean, it's motivation on a whole different level. Yeah. Right? Because it's personal.
Yeah. I mean, you could do, I had this opportunity last year to go down and hear a story about, it was a case study review of Gibson guitars, and they had gone into an ESOP. And an ESOP is another similar model that you could do. You're giving people ownership and making them feel connected into what you're trying to do. If civic leaders find ways to do that, I think they could be really, really successful.
Let's look a bit to the future, Brendon. I'm going to give you a different kind of focus on this one. You know that I'm very proud of the co-op model here at UC. I believe it's the engine of how we learn through cooperative education, and it's really about blending students and faculty and staff and partners. But if I think about the power of connection and partners, let's look ahead and think about how can businesses, universities, and organizations really work to support this region. And you and I have talked a lot about the power of and vitality of attracting and retaining talent in particular. In your wishes, in your dreams, how would we work together to go to the next level on that?
Well, I just want to say, first of all, I love being on this campus. This is the center of what the future of Cincinnati looks like.
Oh, I love that.
When I was here last week with Dr. Pinto, and we went to the top of the Crosley Tower as they are taking it down with Michelle O'Rourke.
Yes, with Michelle.
And Skanska.
She offered that.
It was such a cool.
Scary?
No,
she
it was
offered
not
me.
scary.
All right, I'm gonna have to do
the
that.
O'Rourke team's very safe, so I felt very. They
excellent.
prioritized safety.
But you could see.
But it was so cool to see what they were doing, because you had all of these folks on the roof of this building, which is legend on Cincinnati's campus. I live a mile from here, and I'm going to miss it on the skyline, but progress. And they are taking it down piece by piece. And you know who was up on that roof were people who care about UC. The Lieutenant Governor was there, who thinks about education as a priority so that Ohioans can reach their full potential. And you had UC co-ops who were either co-oping at that moment, or they were 4 or 5 years into their career, and they started working at O'Rourke or Skanska as a UC co-op.
Oh, that's great.
And the building that they are replacing there is a STEM building, the 4th STEM building on UC's campus, which is going to help chart the course of the future of talent in this particular community, right here on MLK, right in the middle of the city. Stone's throw from all of our hospitals, I-75 and the aerospace corridor all the way up to Dayton. This right here, where we're sitting, the College of Business here is really a beacon point for the future of this particular region. And when I pulled up today to park in the parking garage, there's a giant banner over the street that says "Welcome," and it's because you are hosting high schoolers from, like you said, on the way in here, all over, who are coming here to think about what their career looks like. And if you look at cities that have, seen their growth move exponentially, it is because they have welcomed newcomers of all kinds, and then given them the opportunity to shape the future of the place in which they want to live. And so it has to work both ways.
It has to.
All of these folks who are coming here, I don't want you to come here and just get your degree and then move on and get a job and say, this is the city that we have created for you, live in it. I want you to come here, get your degree, get a job here, and then be a part of the forces that help shape the city of the future. If you look at cities like Denver and Nashville, and we're going to Charlotte this year for our leadership exchange, those are cities that have imported hundreds of thousands of people, new talent into their community. And what they have said is, once you get here, this is yours, and you get to do with it what you want. And I want those people to come here and shape this. They should feel ownership of it. They should feel connected to it. They should feel say, this is the city that I want to live in the future.
Oh, that's a great example, because I would love to help our students, whether they grew up in Cincinnati or coming from afar, build that ownership in the city.
The co-op program is so perfect, because you're getting
a great way to do
the students off campus right out of the chute. You know, you go to some universities and it's like, okay, you're going to be in these 4 walls for the whole time that you're here. And I think the model now, and I benefited from this where I went, is that they push you to explore what's going on in the community outside of the campus. That's really important.
It is important, and one of the ways I'd love to conclude our podcast is with some advice for this future generation. I think a particular question I'd love to ask you is, if someone wanted to help shape the future of their city, Cincinnati in particular, but it could be beyond, but didn't know where to begin, what advice would you give?
Well, selfishly, I mean, we haven't spent a lot of time talking about the chamber.
But that's true.
And I would just say there are so many ways to connect to our organization. I tell people I usually start by saying we're a nearly 200-year-old organization, and that's one because I enjoy history, but also I think it's that connectedness to who we are and our culture in our community is really important. So I tell people to knock on our door, and that could mean you want to sign up for our weekly newsletter so that you know what's going on in this community. You want to come to the free networking events. You want to, if you are a summer intern in Cincinnati and you sign up for the SYNC program, we will help orient you to this community as a whole. There are leadership programs for more seasoned executives as you move through your career. There's opportunities to be involved from a government affairs perspective. And then there's all the other cool stuff that we do like Blink and Oktoberfest and so much else that bring community to our region. But I do think of I do want our organization to be positioned as we're a great first call for people. In our days of going to college, probably, if you remember, there was an information line usually on campus. Do you remember this?
Yes.
You would call whatever the number was. I still remember mine, and you could call whoever you wanted, or whoever would answer the phone, and you could ask them anything, like what's the time? What time is it? What time's the shuttle going to pick me up? What time is this? Because we didn't have it all on our phones. I know I'm going to sound really old. I'm not that old, but we didn't have it all on our phones. It wasn't just Google this for me, please. It was the number you called to Google this for me. In some ways, our chamber can do that. Is that you can call us and we can help orient you into this community. I want to be a part of something outside of my company too. I want to be engaged. I want to benefit my company by being engaged in the community, like we talked about earlier. We're a great first call. But in terms of advice, after you get past knocking on our door, I would say you should never stop learning. You should never stop reading. And I'm not talking about reading just texts and scrolling, but pick up a book, go deeper, try to understand the history of the company that you're working for, the history of the community that you're working for. Go talk to people. When I worked at Kroger, I spent 10 years working at Kroger, leading government affairs, and some of the most important conversations I had were with executives who were nearing retirement, who told me about their careers, but also what had happened in the company over the last several decades. Those moments, it's not quite mentorship, although you're getting mentorship out of it, but it's helping you understand just the ways of things, because companies that once you hit a certain longevity as a company, your company in some ways has, there's some writing about this that I'll send to you and you can cite in the notes, but about companies that essentially have their own souls after a period of time. And I kind of buy into that, that if you've been around that long, you can call it culture, but it's really, there's some ways there. So my advice to young leaders is find those people who can tell you stories about the company, the city, the neighborhood, the community, the organization that you care about, and soak that up. Soak that up so that you understand the moments that you're in. Don't be limited by it, but learn from it, and then use your knowledge of how things work to be able to shape that future that you want.
Thank you, Brendon. Really, just maybe a broader thank you. I treasure your friendship, your wisdom, and expertise, and today very much your inspiration in all you do at the Chamber. I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase that some of the studies on the paradox of choice, and that there are many, many ways to find purpose and get involved, that they can be paralyzing. But in this great city, we have the Chamber, and it is a tremendous resource to all of us. So thank you for your leadership.
Thank you, Marianne. So glad to be here. Thanks, Grant. It's great space you have here. Get engaged with what's going on here at this campus. This is the future here.
It is. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Bearcats Mean Business. If today's episode sparked a new idea, challenged your thinking, or helped you see your path a little more clearly, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share the episode with someone in your network. Thanks for being part of the conversation. And remember, real-world success begins here at Lender.